class, here's our lab setup for the vaping lab. So find your lab sheet and we will go through some of this together. At the very top of your lab sheet, you see the materials, and most of them are right in front of us. Let's see, for the procedures, I've already done some of this just to kind of save on time, but let's read through it together and we can make sure that we have everything completely ready to go. So number 1 says to fill 2 beakers with water to the 100 milliliter mark. And if we look at these beakers, there's the 100 milliliter mark, and there's the 100 milliliter mark. So we're right there. It says in our lab sheet, 1 beaker will be marked A, which will be the plain water beaker, and the other beaker will be marked B, which will eventually have oil and water. Right now it's just water. So we can see the A and the B. Okay, it says to take beaker B and tilt it a little, then slowly add 10 milliliters of oil by allowing it to run down the side of the beaker and across the water surface. Okay, what we're using is HEB olive oil, just classic. I don't know if you can really see that in the video, not real well, but that's what we're using. And I already have 10 milliliters of it. We are really zoomed in and I can't zoom out any farther. Maybe I can tilt the camera, but here we have 10 milliliters of oil already ready to go. Okay, so we're gonna take that and we're going to put it in to beaker B. Let me try actually moving this. There we go, that might help a little bit. Okay, so here's my beaker B. We are tilting it to the side and we're going to let the oil kind of run down the side to get in there. Okay, so there we go, beaker B. It says, allow it to sit for a minute until you can see 2 distinct layers, water below, oil on top, which we are pretty much set. Number 2 says to open a pack of seltzer tablets and remove a tablet. So here are the seltzer tablets that we're using. There's 2 per package. It says to use a scalpel or a knife to score the tablet across the diameter. Once scored, pick up the tablet and snap it into 2 equal pieces. And that, again, to save time, I've already done. So here are the 2 equal pieces that we will be using. Okay, number 3, it says 1 partner should be ready with the timer, that's you. So have your phone or another timer ready to go. The other partner, who's me, will add 1/2 a tablet of the seltzer tablets to beaker A, the plain water beaker. Now I want to do this by gently sliding the tablet down the side of the beaker. We should not create any splash. That's kind of our goal. Okay, now as soon as the tablet lands on the bottom of the beaker, start the timer. Okay, so this is where you can make sure that you have your timer ready to go. Here's our beaker A. Let's turn it so that we can see what's going to happen inside of there. And again, as soon as this tablet reaches the bottom, that's when you want to start the timer. So make sure your timer's going. Okay, it says, let's see, write your observations, 3A, write your observations about what happens when the tablet enters the water. So things to look for. How do the bubbles produced by the tablet act when they reach the surface? What does the surface look like during the effervescence period? And that's this whole bubbling period. What does the surface look like after the bubbles are no longer breaking the surface? So you should be able to see bubbling happening above the surface and also within the water. Okay, and again, we can see that bubbles are happening out of the water because of the bubbles that we can see on the glass above the surface of the water. Okay, now it says to stop the timer when all surface bubbling has stopped. So we're still timing, still timing. Stop the timer when all surface bubbling has stopped. And I know this might be hard for you all to see. It's still going. And on the table, I wish I could tilt this further. I can see, I might not be able to see it. It looks kind of a little bit wet over here and then over on the other side. So that's kind of evidence that the gas is coming out and escaping. Let's see, the bubbles are still going. And they are still going. You can kind of tell, right? We can see the bubbles within the water. As they come up, they're breaching the surface. You can kind of see them breaking the surface. You see movement in the water as they break the surface. So I'll tell you when to stop your timer if you want to make your observations. So again, 3B, you're making your observations. What did it look like? What does it look like? It's still going. Be as detailed as you can because we're going to do the same thing in beaker B, and obviously there's not much difference in the setup. Alright class, go ahead and stop your timer there. It's been a while. Obviously it's still going a little bit, but it has slowed down. Okay, a lot of that surface bubbling, it is still breaking the surface, but for time's sake, go ahead and stop your timers and write what you have. We get the idea, right? It's taking a while for the bubbling to cease. Okay, make sure you record your time in 3C. Okay, moving on to number 4, with the timer ready, I'm going to add 1/2 tablet to beaker B. This is the oil in the water as we can see. I want to remember to drop the tablet gently into the water, creating no splash. You want to make sure you're starting the timer once the tablet reaches the bottom. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. For beaker B, we'll turn it so that you can see it, what's going on a little bit better. Here's my tablet. We'll slide it down the side. Don't forget to start your timer as soon as it reaches the bottom. Okay, so write your observations about what happens when the tablet enters the water. Same thing, things to look for. We want to look for how do the bubbles produced by the tablet act when they reach the surface. What does the surface look like during the effervescence period? What does the surface look like after the bubbles are no longer breaking the surface? I don't want to move it, but you can kind of see back there we have some bubbling happening. I really wish y'all could see this a little bit better. If you have your own oil and water and Alka-Seltzer tablets at home, feel free to do this. You'll be able to see it better. What I'm noticing, and I'm just going to tell you because it's hard for you to see, is that the bubbles are coming up through the water. Okay, and they're getting through some of the oil. You can see right here along the perimeter. Let's see if I can get my finger in there. You can see right along the perimeter, there's a lot of bubbles, right? They're sitting right on top of the water, but only a few of them are really coming up, like that one right there and that one right there. Okay, there's another one. There are only a few of them, sorry, are coming up and reaching the surface of the water. Okay, so a lot of them, it almost looks like they're trapped at the surface of the water. It looks like they're having a hard time breaking through the oil. Now in the back, we can see a lot more active bubbling happening back there. But same thing, you know, we don't really have as big of a mess outside of the beaker. And again, I wish I could tilt this down a little bit more, but if we're looking at the table, you know, there's not really as much moisture with this one, meaning that the gas bubbles didn't really come out of the beaker as strongly as what they did with beaker A. It looks like the bubbling is still going just a little bit. So keep your timer going. It looks like beaker A, they're still coming up a little bit, this beaker right here. It looks like the bubbles are still coming up a little bit and breaking through the surface. Obviously down here it looks like there's a lot more, but they're not really breaking the surface very much. So obviously we're good with that timer there. Okay, so go ahead and write your observations in 4B or type them in. Keep your timer going for beaker B. It's still bubbling a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see it. There are some bubbles getting through. It looks like a lot of them are just kind of trapped, again, along that perimeter. You know, the barrier between the water and the oil. Looks like there's a lot of bubbles that are just kind of stuck there. Some are getting through. And then there's beaker A again. While you're waiting, if you want to move on to number 5, it says, what differences did you notice between the two beakers during the effervescence period? Go ahead and fill that in. We still see a little bit of bubbling, but not like we did in beaker A. So go ahead and stop your timer and record that in 4C. And just note that in beaker A, yeah, we stopped the timer kind of early for both of them. Okay, the majority of the bubbling had been gone by that point at about the same rate that, you know, we stopped for both of them. But they both do continue to bubble a little bit, so that is something to kind of note. Okay, go ahead and work through the rest of your lab with your questions, and this is it for this lab setup part.